Now, the reviews for Village of the Angels were released a couple of days before the actual episode, and these reviews were saying that this episode is the best chapter yet in Doctor Who Flux. So, were those reviews telling the truth? So right off the bat, this episode started with kind of like horror vibes, and I loved it. I was creeped out already. This story kicked off with Claire Brown, who was introduced in episode 1 of Doctor Who Flux, and she was going through some sort of lie detector test. Although she went into some possessed kind of state, which kind of reminded me of the exorcism and really creeped me out. But this led us into the opening sequence for this episode, because it was revealed that Claire could see that the angels had the TARDIS. But straight after the opening credits, the episode kicked off immediately from where chapter 3 ended, with the angels flying the TARDIS. The angels had the phone box. The Doctor, Yaz and Dan were standing in the doorway of the TARDIS looking terrified. Now, in the scene of the angels actually flying the TARDIS, I absolutely loved the kind of stop motion attack of the angels. It was honestly really scary, but really cool. One little thing I noticed in this story was the reappearance of the psychic paper. I really missed the psychic paper. It's a small thing, but it's like, I don't know, it's one of those things that you don't realise you miss it until it's gone. Now, one underrated little bit of this story was the soundtrack. The soundtrack of this episode was brilliant. I feel like every piece of music in this episode really fit the scene, and it was kind of a very horror-esque soundtrack that, as I said, really fit each scene that it went with. The scene with Yaz and Dan in the field where they thought there was a scarecrow was really cool, and this was a scene that really creeped me out. And I watched this episode at like 4:30 in the morning in the dark, so this, I was so much more terrified. But the scene with the Weeping Angel in the field really creeped me out and had me on the edge of my seat. So then we jump to Belle, who we met in chapter 3 of Doctor Who Flux, and last episode I really enjoyed her character. This episode I just found her to be a bit annoying. Although I really liked Neil from the In-Betweeners, I can't remember his character's name, so in this episode of Who Review I'm just going to refer to him as Neil from In-Betweeners. He seemed like a really lovely character, a really fun character. I hope we haven't seen the last of him, but I'm guessing that's probably it. But he seemed like a great character. The scene of the Weeping Angels surrounding the house was terrifying. Awesome, but absolutely terrifying. Another scene that had me on the edge of my seat. And then of course the Weeping Angels actually breaking into the house and then like bashing on the door. I thought this was such an awesome, intense scene to see the Weeping Angels trying to, fight their way inside. And I think with this one scene, it just immediately made me scared of the Weeping Angels again. I loved it. So Yaz and Dan were transported by the Weeping Angel to 1901, and I loved seeing these two together. It was great to see them work together a bit more, and it was nice to see just Yaz and Dan, and I think the next episode as well looks like we're going to get a lot of those two together. And I think they make a great kind of dynamic duo. Now, the village against space. Whoa. The special effects of this scene were incredible. I feel like every scene that featured the Weeping Angels in this episode was just creepy. You got scary vibes from them. And that's what you want with the Weeping Angels. You want to be scared, you want to be terrified, and I think that the writers of this episode absolutely nailed it. The Weeping Angels making their way into the house through Claire's drawing was such an awesome scene. I love that the ripped up drawing was kind of making itself go back together, and the fact that we had an angel on fire, I think that was just awesome. It was such an intense scene. I loved this moment. Also, the idea of a Weeping Angel kind of taking over Claire's mind, I loved. I also really liked that we got to see the Doctor go into Claire's mind and communicate with the Weeping Angel. I thought that was really cool. And a Weeping Angel on the run from other Weeping Angels, I think that's such a clever idea. Also, during this scene where the Doctor was in Claire's mind, we got a little mention of the Division. And I think with 2 chapters left, I think we're going to start getting a lot more information about the Division, especially in the next episode. Now back to Belle's little side story. The Swarm sister, I can't remember her name, had arrived to take people away inside the passengers. She had come to trap them inside the passengers. And I understand that this little side story is probably important for the overall series arc, but I don't know, I just found that to be boring. I'm glad we didn't focus too much on Belle this episode. I really liked that a lot of our focus was on the Weeping Angels. I wanted to focus on the Weeping Angels in the village. I didn't care about Belle in this story. I didn't care about what was going on in that little side story. And I think this is the first chapter in this series where I didn't care what the Swarm were doing. Like, I don't want to know about them. I'm focusing on this horror episode. Now, the scene with Jericho in the TV was really, really good. The Weeping Angel kind of leaping out of the TV made me jump. That actually creeped me out a lot. And I also loved that basically the lie detector test was drawing a picture of the Weeping Angel. Like, that was awesome. As soon as I saw that happening, I lost my mind. Now let's talk about the tunnel scenes in this episode. Oh my god. The tunnel scenes were so creepy, and it's like I was so scared in this moment. The Weeping Angel hands like sticking out of the wall was absolutely nightmarish. Great scene though, just absolutely terrifying. Now the little plot twist of Mrs. Hayward being the missing child, I was not expecting that at all, and I thought that was really, really cool and a great little plot twist to chuck into the episode. Now let's talk about this week's cliffhanger. Oh jeez. The Doctor turning into a Weeping Angel was such a cool scene. I thought the special effects were amazing in this scene. It was intense, and this was one of those scenes where you were like, what is happening? Like, you know, something's gonna happen, the Doctor's in trouble, and I thought this was such an awesome way to end the episode, a great cliffhanger. And you know, I was actually scared for the Doctor in this scene. Like, you were watching this terrified for her. Honestly, I congratulate Chris Chibnall and Maxine Alderton for making the Weeping Angels terrifying again. They did such an amazing job writing this episode. So my rating for this week's episode is a 9 out of 10. I loved this story. This has become my #1 story and my #1 chapter for Doctor Who Flux. And to answer my question from the start of this episode of Who Review, and these reviews were saying that this episode is the best chapter yet in Doctor Who Flux. So were those reviews telling the truth? Yes, this was the best chapter of Doctor Who Flux. As much as I absolutely love the Sontarans and I loved War of the Sontarans, this episode takes the top spot for me, because basically for the majority of the episode I was on the edge of my seat. I was freaking out. It was so good. I also love that the closing theme of this story as well was much slower and much darker, and you know, it wasn't as kind of intense as it usually is. And I also love that we got a mid-credits scene as well. We've never had that with Doctor Who, and I thought this was a great little touch. In the mid-credits scene, we saw Vinder continue his search for Belle as he met with Neil from the In-Betweeners, and I thought this was again a really good scene, and obviously it's setting some things up, and it's setting up Vinder's journey for the rest of the series. Now next week, oh, I'm so excited for next week's episode. Here's a little teaser.
It's very hard. Pattern optimization in progress.
We've been in this decade for 3 years now. Do you think we'll ever get back?
Govan is still in Pirate Fleet. Earth's shield is now breachable.
How you expect to protect this pitiful race, I do not know.
Can you feel the time force growing? It's working. Just as we planned.
The Ood, Kate Stewart, Dan and Yaz working together. I think it is going to be such a good story next week. Even if we don't have Unit back, we've got Kate. Although I feel like Kate Stewart is going to be kind of like Unit won't be there, but I reckon Kate's gonna be like a lone agent trying to figure out what's going on with the Flux. And I honestly can't wait to see her back. But let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Chapter 4, Village of the Angels.
Hello, this is Sylvester McCoy here, Doctor Who number 7. I want to say, Whovians, don't forget to subscribe to Whovian Comely. There's a new video every week. And you don't have to be comely to watch it. You can be uncomely too.